It is officially strawberry season and our strawberry patch is going crazy right now. If you are in a similar position and you're growing strawberries at home, or maybe you just picked up a bunch of berries at the farmer's market, today I have a video showing you how to turn those strawberries into a really easy and healthy strawberry jam. This is going to be a low sugar recipe that has a secret healthy ingredient, and of course we're first going to start with strawberries. I'm starting off with about 6 cups here, but this recipe is totally adaptable to whatever amount of strawberries you have. Jam is always one of those things that's great to make if you have an abundance of fruit. But if you just bought a smaller amount of berries, or maybe it's the beginning or end of the season where you're only getting a few berries at a time, this is also a really good recipe to scale down and make a really small batch of jam. To start off, we're just going to take the tops off of the strawberries, and any larger ones I'll cut in half. Homegrown berries do tend to be a little smaller than grocery store ones, so if they're on the smaller side, I'll just leave them whole. And I know there are strawberry hullers out there to take out the top part, but I find it easiest just to slice off the top with a paring knife. This is probably the most tedious part of the process, and throughout the month of June, I probably spend hours doing this to so many strawberries. Jam is often made with this powdered pectin that I'm showing you here, and the way this works is that you have to have a very specific amount of fruit and also sugar. So here on the chart on the back, for the amount of fruit that I'm starting with, which is about half a recipe, you would use 2 cups of sugar, which I think is a crazy amount for the amount of strawberries that we're starting with. So I really wanted to create a recipe that didn't use that much sugar, and also, like I mentioned, you could make a smaller batch of jam as well, because a lot of times we don't just have like 12 cups of strawberries at one time. I placed my prepped strawberries into a pot, and I'm going to add my sugar now, and I'm starting off with a half cup of sugar. If you remember, I mentioned that the equivalent of this using pectin would use 2 cups of sugar, so this uses just a quarter of that. I also added a pinch of salt, and we're just going to mix that together and let the strawberries boil down on medium heat until they start releasing all of their juices. I will say that a half cup of sugar for this many strawberries is definitely on the less sweet side. I don't like a super sweet jam, but if you want something that's closer to like what you would get at a grocery store, you might want to start with a cup of sugar. And this will also depend on how sweet your strawberries or whatever fruit you're using are as well. So the strawberries have been boiling down for a few minutes, and now you can see that they're starting to release all of these juices. And they've also started to soften up a little bit. I'm going to start mashing them against the side of the pot with my wooden spoon. They're also going to start foaming after you boil them for a little while longer. We prefer a little bit more of a chunkier jam, but if you like yours really smooth, then you might want to puree your strawberries before you do this whole process instead of using them whole or halved. It also helps to use a whisk once they've softened to help break them up a little bit as well. Now that our strawberries have cooked down a bit, it's time for our secret ingredient that is going to turn this into a really good jam consistency. And the secret ingredient is chia seeds. If you haven't heard of chia seeds, they are a really awesome ingredient that is high in fiber, protein, and omega-3s. Here's what they look like when they're dry. They're super tiny. And here are some chia seeds that I soaked in some water. Chia seeds absorb a lot of water, and you can see how they turn into this like gelatinous texture. It's kind of weird, but it's going to be perfect for this jam. So I am going to start off with about a 1/3 cup of chia seeds, and I'm going to put that into the pot with our cooked down strawberries. And all of that excess liquid that you see in this pot is going to be absorbed by those chia seeds, and they're going to create a really nice jammy texture. Just make sure to stir these in really well because they do tend to clump up a little bit, so you just want to make sure everything is evenly dispersed in your liquid. The chia seeds will take about 10 minutes to absorb liquid, so I'm just gonna let this hang out for a little bit. At this point, if you'd like, you can turn off the heat so that you don't keep cooking that fresh flavor out of your strawberries. I'm also going to be adding some lemon zest and the juice of half of this lemon. This is optional, but I really like the freshness and brightness that the lemon adds to it. You can leave this out if you don't have this on hand or if you just don't want to add it. You can really use this technique with any kind of berries you have on hand. I think that the chia seeds work especially well with a berry jam because berries already have those little seeds, and although the chia seeds do get soft when they absorb liquid, it is nice visually just to have it already look like the berries that you have in the jam so that if you're giving this to someone else, they're not confused about why like a peach jam has a bunch of black specks in it. So here's how it looks like after the chia seeds have absorbed a lot of liquid. I'm just testing it on a spoon to see if I like the consistency. And this is pretty good, but I wanted it just a touch thicker, so I added a couple more teaspoons of chia seeds. At this point, you can also taste for sugar levels because you can just add more sugar at this point if you want to. While your mixture is still hot, it'll melt really easily. And just keep in mind that this will set just a little bit thicker as it cools down as well. So here it is after those couple of extra teaspoons of chia seeds I added, and I think this is the perfect consistency for us. It makes a really nice, chunky but jammy texture. So I'm just going to start ladling this into some small mason jars. Because this jam has a much lower sugar content than a lot of other jams, it's not going to last as long in the fridge. You basically just want to treat it like a fresh sauce, so you should probably eat it within a week. A lot of jams that have a lot of sugar can last 3 weeks to a month. To make sure we're able to eat this before it goes bad, I'm going to portion this into really small containers. We only have one person in this house that really likes jam, so this is a good size container for us to be able to finish comfortably. And to preserve this, I'm going to be putting all of the extra jars into the freezer. This is not a recipe that you can water bath can, again because it doesn't have the sugar levels that are necessary for canning, so the best way to preserve this is just by popping it into the freezer. I would just suggest letting your jam cool down at room temperature and then in the fridge and then pop it in the freezer. That way any temperature fluctuations don't cause your jar to crack or for your jam to expand unevenly. As I mentioned, this jam is really good to make with lots of different berries, so here's an example of a jam I made using the same exact technique, using a combination of strawberries and blackberries, and I pulled it straight from the fridge and you can see how it sets into this really nice jammy texture that is perfect on a slice of toast. I also made this batch with berries that were in our freezer that we picked last spring and summer. So if you don't have access to fresh berries, this is also a good way to use some frozen berries. Or if you don't have time to whip up a batch and you have fresh berries coming in, you can freeze those now and then make this jam later. So here is the finished batch of jams. We ended up with 3.5 cups. And this is going to be so great to pull out of the freezer in the winter to give us a taste of those spring strawberries. I hope you guys found this helpful. Let me know if you tried this recipe and how you like it. Make sure to subscribe to our channel for more videos like this, and we'll see you again in the next video.